What are secrets among your profession that the general public is unaware of? Story 1. I've been a waiter for a long time, and the general public has no idea how many times I've seen my coworkers come in drunk but still make it through a shift and have no one notice. There's also at least a 60% chance that your bartender has snorted cocaine in the last 8 hours. Story 2. Sometimes students are given a better grade than they should because we are too tired to really give it anymore. Sometimes they are given a worse grade because of this, but those teachers. Story 3. We are being timed at the drive-thru. Please be considerate for the other customers. I feel I'm trapped in a corner when a customer does not know what they want and forces me to remake their drink several times while there is a line in the drive-thru. Story 4. Airline pilot here. You know those blankets that we give you on the flight? The airline never washes them, ever. We just shake them out and shrink wrap them for a later flight. Every once in a while we toss one that's unusable. Story 5. I am a lawyer. Yes, we know our adversary. Yes, we will be chummy and joke around with him/her before the judge walks in. Yes, I'm still advocating for you against my adversary. Story 6. That some public defenders do a really great job and some private defense attorneys a really poor one. That what you pay for and what you get in legal representation often has no connection. Story 7. Combat medic. Not so much a secret, but a key to being a lazy piece of in a generally high-stress job is to teach the boots to do your job for you, essentially making everyone a medic in all but the most advanced stuff so they still have a reason to keep you around. Story 8. Former ballet dancer. Here it's a total job, at least in the USA. Only large internationally renowned companies pay well enough to live off of. Everyone else gets paid like 20 kir, and some are even worse and only pay per performance. You need to either be supported by your parent spouse or work a side job or two. You only have a contract for one season, usually August, May or so, and there is no guarantee that there will be a spot for you in the company the next year. If you get injured or get fat, you're probably going to get fired. Story 9. I work in technical support. The vast majority of the time I know the fix immediately, and it's something I deal with a dozen times a day. If I say I need to put you on a quick hold whilst I research that, it means I'm Googling the answer to your problem. If I say I need to put you on hold for a few minutes, it means I'm asking a coworker if they know what the answer is. If I say I need to call you back because I have to research more, it means none of us has any idea what the issue is and he'll actually have to do some real work. Also, stop blurting out your passwords to me. I don't need to know what it is. Nobody does. If I need to log into your account, I'll just ask you to type it when I remote into your machine. If you can't get in, I'll reset it to something else and we'll deal with the password change later. Story 10. People sometimes die in hotel rooms. As soon as the body is out, we clean the room and put it back out for rent. Doesn't happen often, but there's a chance your bed had a dead person in it less than 2 hours before you checked in. Story 11. I am a young female in an assisted living home. Men may become wheelchair-bound, unable to speak or hear, but there is always one body part that still works. Story 12. Not sure how secret this is outside military circles. An infantry platoon in the U.S. Army is usually about 45 soldiers. They contain 4 squads, each led by a squad leader who has about 10 years of experience in the Army. The 4 squad leaders answer to a platoon sergeant, who can have about 15 years of experience in the Army. Usually more than half of the platoon has been on a combat deployment. Who is in charge of all of them though? A 22-year-old second lieutenant who graduated college less than 2 years ago. There's actually a lot of reasoning behind it all, but it's still pretty wild to think about. Edit lots of questions. And it's kind of my fault for being very flippant. Let me try and clear things up. Lieutenants are put in charge of platoons because they need leadership experience for when they reach higher positions. In the case of a platoon leader though, several people said it while he is in charge of the platoon and makes the final decisions, he would be an idiot not to take guidance from his squad leaders and platoon sergeants. If they are quality NCOs, they will do their best to make him excel as their leader, and if he is a quality officer, he will let them help him. Officers start out young because at least in the US they are required to have a 4-year degree. Most people start college at 18 and end at 22, and so most cadets get their commission at 22. There are definitely ways that you can make the jump from enlisted to officer. A lot of people enlist in order to pay for college, and then do ROTC at college to get a commission. These officers are obviously more experienced and sometimes higher quality. Story 13. Call center technical support. The surveys you're sometimes asked to fill out are kinda bullshit in that anything below 100 counts as a fail. Some are slightly more forgiving, but usually not by a whole lot. So people who give you anything less than a perfect score for petty reasons like everyone can improve or I don't like the hold music are actively hurting you and might in the long run cost you your job. Vehicle assembly. Whatever you're driving contains a lot more zip ties than you would expect, especially if it's a lorry. Story 14. Largest secret of my profession are how completely understaffed the 911 communication center is. Most of the time when you call 911, that person is also doing 3 other things at the same time. They are normally doing the job of 2 other people, and probably trying to get in a slightly warm meal also. 911 dispatchers don't care what you took to get high. Just tell us so we can help you. We do care about how you sustained that trauma injury though, not only to help treat you but to keep the responding unit safe. Most large cities are now switching to a system to evaluate the patient over the phone, so we don't send an ambulance and a fire truck to every single call, so facts are important when calling. Story 15. RN former EMT. If you go into cardiac arrest you're probably gonna die. My state has some of the best revival rates in the country, and they are only like 15 if medical personnel witness the arrest. Story 16 Reality TV is anything but. Ever seen House Hunters on HGTV? The couple looking for a house actually already bought and live in one of the houses that they're looking at. The other houses are usually friends' houses, or houses that have sold but not closed or moved in yet. Story 17 I work in retail. Yeah, we may seem like we are best friends with every employee, but nope, it's like an episode of Gossip Girl every time I go to work. I always think before I enter home, what drama will I hear today? And who do I have to be fake nice to? Edit, I sound like most do, but wow, I didn't expect this to get a lot of votes. Then I say thanks, kind strangers. Story 18 My old man worked in a hospital. The amount of monkey business between doctors and nurses was spectacular. Edit, just to clarify. Alt hot, this sounds like a good thing. Most of the people involved had families and kids, lots of marriages destroyed, careers ruined, and lots of psychopath behavior resulted. I know one doctor was fired for sitting in his office naked and inviting nurses in for various reasons. Very creepy stuff. Story 19 Most of the time booking through a third party isn't saving you any money and can actually you over if there's a problem with your room during your hotel stay. Story 20 I work at a public library. At least where I work, we don't keep any record of what items you've checked out or look up so that there's nothing to turn over to law enforcement. We also won't turn over any personal contact information to law enforcement without a warrant, and even then we make them go through our IT department, and they are known to make a big production out of everything, easily wasting everyone's time. You're safe at a public library. Ask about anything without fear. I'm not sure if this is a super secret, but there seems to be this idea that libraries are secretly tracking and judging, and that's just not true. If I can help an old man find YouTube videos of black women shaving their legs, I'm pretty sure I can help you find your Amish romances without judgment, Janice. Story 21 Grocery retailer. If your card is declined at my register, it's not going to undecline at the next register. I hope to God that truly isn't a secret. We offer to carry your bags to your car so you won't leave your cart in the parking lot. We eat and take home your returns. Story 22 I work as a lab tech in a private environmental lab company. We mainly get samples from the government and a couple of other private companies. The instruments that we use to test for contaminants in the samples we received are ancient. There's some stuff that's 20 years old that we are currently using to test on your drinking water and your soil. When those instruments start up on us, we either Mickey Mouse the issue or we have our old in-house mechanic of all things guy find a better, more reliable way to Mickey Mouse the problem. Also, we have Jimmy-rigged fume hoods that don't really work as well. Literally the lab is just falling apart just like the instruments. Also, our software and hardware is old AF. Like we're talking about Windows 98, we're still using floppy disks to handle all your results of your samples, old. We even have the fat desktop computer monitors as well. Story 23 High school teacher. Sometimes, on really tiring and long days during lecture, we sometimes lose our place or forget the right words, but we know there's a smart kid out there who does know. Instead of embarrassingly scrambling for notes, high schoolers smell fear and will pounce on you if you show it. We'll say some bullshit like, and so when we take this factor we. What, anybody know? Yes, Megan, what's the answer? It may look like we're prodding students to pay attention and reinforce learning, which is a tactic often used, but a good portion may be that we just had a brain or downright forgot and need help without losing attention. Before anyone jumps on it. Yes, teachers are human and we act so with our students. It's not a matter of academic arrogance and being wrong in front of them. That happens and it's okay. This is an example of days where patience is thin and student comment is not needed. Story 24 I Google tons of things. I can't possibly remember how to do every feature of every application: Word, Excel, Visio, Win 7, 8, 10, our EMR, 25 other online applications, Firefox, Chrome, IE, Outlook, OWA, etc. 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 I do IT support. Story 25 When you ask me to make your clip art look less blocky, I don't do anything with what you gave me. I just use my superior Googling skills to find a better version. Edit granted, most people on Reddit are the type of people who would probably realize that on their own. Story 26 In a restaurant. Whenever you ask your server to double-check with the chef, even after we've told you that something can't be exchanged, swapped, changed as it's the middle of the service and we're full, we might go into the kitchen, but most don't ask the chef. A lot of the time, the answer's a flat no followed by a lot of swearing from the chef due to stress. Story 27 If a stripper tells you their real name, it's almost certainly a secondary fake name to give you a false sense of trust and personal connection, so that you're more likely to spend money on them. Story 28 I walk dogs with an online service like Uber, for dog walkers, and the training and hiring process is a joke. It used to be much more in-depth and hands-on, but I just took a quiz that I could take and retake until I got everything right. I didn't need any credentials or referrals, just reliable transportation and money for a background check. I love dogs and I consider myself very competent and trustworthy, but I felt so uncomfortable knowing anyone could have access to people's pets when they're not home. You can meet walkers if you're going to book a boarding or dog sitting or recurring walk, but otherwise we never have to meet you face to face. Customer and walker support is slowly improving. After everything, the horror stories we hear in the community are about mean or crazy owners. Owners just need a credit card. No background check or profile checking involved. Also, walkers cannot rate dogs or owners, and can't see any notes walkers have left about the dogs unless they accept a walk request. I enjoy this as a side gig, but goodness, I would just hire through a local service if I needed someone to walk my dog, or some other service where I felt like the safety of dogs, walkers, and owners was more of a priority. Story 29. Still in grad school, becoming an ecologist conservationist, but have worked in a wildlife rehab center. We are all major animal lovers, but our job sometimes consists of killing animals, sometimes a lot of them. Story 30. That waiver you are signing practicing any leisure is useless. The company is responsible for your safety. However, there is a clause called risks inherent to the practice of activities, which means you cannot sue for a fracture playing hockey, but can definitely sue in case of equipment or human failure. Story 31. Cocktails are super easy to make. No experience at all is necessary if you just want to make them at home for guests. Most of them are just the ingredients thrown into a shaker, and shaken over ice, and the shaker can be 2 cups jammed together. The ice forces the ingredients together. Plus, most cocktails you'll end up drinking are the same few alcohols, paired with a non-alcoholic ingredient, and usually a slightly more uncommon alcohol. Note the slightly. What you're really paying for when you buy a cocktail is an attractive person or sometimes non-attractive. Hi to make it for you, present and garnish it so it's Instagrammable, and usually to not have to buy an entire bottle of a more obscure liquor, plus to do it really fast. I blame bloggers for this. They keep trying to spruce up recipes and make them more complicated than they need to be. It kinda blows my mind when friends want to have a cocktail night or something but don't want to spend money going to bars. For the price that they'd all spend on the cocktails, they could buy enough bottles of grog to make dozens of them. My parents used to be serial offenders of this. They'd go out to try the cocktails, but not realize that their alcohol cabinet had all the stuff they needed to make a super decent one of whatever they wanted. Story 32. I'm a line cook at a very nice restaurant. We are all drug-doing, tattoo-covered, alcoholics. Well, not all but most. I've met so many people who are shocked when I tell them where I work based on my looks. Story 33. I work at a health food store. Half the time I do not know what the kind of herb you are talking about or if it is going to cure your crazy ailment. I don't want to show you where the homeopathic medicine is because I think it's bull. Bottom line is eat better, exercise and see a doctor if you are really sick. There are some basic remedies and fun things to play which doctor with, but go to the hospital if you feel like you're dying. And most of the time he'll tell you what's bullshit unless you're rude or ridiculously stubborn. Story 34. Probably too late, but I work for a political party at the state level. If you have ever donated any amount of money to a political candidate or organization, the party knows and records everything about you that they can get their grubby little hands on. There are full-time employees and interns that spend hours and hours every day doing extensive donor research. Story 35. I'm a cashier, about to be a key holder. 1. We track your every move if we think you're stealing, and no, we don't think everyone steals. We aren't randomly sweeping at the aisle. You're on almost every single time you walk in the door. 2. If you're in, every employee knows by the end of the week. 3. Also relates to 2. Since everyone knows what you've been saying, we're keeping heavily aware of what words come out of your mouth. And if you're really being rude or acting like a pig, the managers are hiding on an aisle listening for you to slip up so you can be kicked out. For if you ask us to hold an item, we will. Seriously, if a sale is happening Friday and you find an item in said sale on Wednesday, give it to us and we'll put it in the back for you. 5. Related to 4. If your item keeps flying off the shelves, just tell us. Once we get it off the truck, we'll hold it for you to buy. We held 10 boxes of cookies for a man because we kept running out and he was obsessed with them. 6. At least at my place of work, if you're short by a few cents or if I seriously do not want to break your 20/3, we'll take it out of the donation drawer. Donations goes back to the companies at mine if we have it. Edit aisle, not aisle. Sorry, dyslexique. Story 36. Third-party booking sites for hotels save you no money, might even cost more. They're all generally owned by Expedia too, even though they're different names. Story 37. I used to work in collections. If you're late for a bill, don't worry until the letters stop coming from the company you owe money to. Also, tell them first and always be nice. There's always a way round it. We don't want to send things further unless you're a total who calls up and yells at us because they can't pay their bill. Story 38. When I worked in retail, customers always seem to be under the impression that, no matter your role within a retail business, whether it be on the checkouts or stock control, a lot of people tend to believe that if you work in a supermarket, you should know every single bit of information, when it comes to nutritional value, about every single item. Used to do my head in. Story 39. Security officer here. If I think you're stealing, all you have to do is run and you're in the clear. Since we're not allowed to detain or chase people depending on the location, all I can do is write down details of your appearance and then hand the details over to police and let them hunt you down. I honestly hope I never have to deal with someone who tries to steal and then when they get caught try to play the victim. Story 40. I work at the local fast food hamburger place, and whenever we run out of hamburgers we just run over to the McDonald's and just start serving everybody McDonald's. We put a new wrapper on it and nobody can tell the difference. Story 41. Your car's air filter can be washed and reused multiple times. My dad was camping and saw a guy hanging up his air filter on a clothesline. He thought it was funny, so he went and asked the guy about it. It turns out the guy was a retired engineer who had worked at Bendix filter manufacturer. Apparently it's one of those secrets that air filter manufacturers don't exactly advertise. Story 42. In the UK, I teach but am a freelance developer for a friend's marketing business during holidays. They employ 5 full-time developers and refuse to hire women under 35. They can't handle the cost of potential maternity leave, nor take the risk of holding the job open for so long with the refusal to come back. Story 43: The amount of tax fraud committed by servers and bartenders in the service industry. A large portion of servers and bartenders will not claim 100% of their tips in order to pocket it, plus there's a good chance your server or bartender is high drunk. Story 44: As a graphic designer, you aren't always paying for how quick something is done, but for the expertise of the designer, I will charge you way more than it should cost to digitize your drawing for a logo. If you hire a real designer, they will go through a lot of paper drawing out thoughts, logos and ideas. Those few logos you do see are actually the best out of 50 other ideas. It doesn't take me long to finalize your logo, but getting to that step is the hardest part, so stop saying you could have come up with that, because if you could, you would have. Story 45: Sound for live shows. Some big performers have a backing track playing on mute, and halfway in when their voice is tired they lip sync with the gate on, so the only thing that comes off the mic is when they truly speak to the audience. Sound for film. Can't recall the number of sounds I've made, and I put in films that, in their original unedited unprocessed form, would make the audience either laugh or leave. No one will ever know, but me knowing it's there just makes me giggle in certain parts. Also, anything watery or splurgy, condoms, lots of water filled, condoms hitting walls. Story 46: GIS data analyst. Most data files we work with to make multimillion-dollar decisions, ecological decisions, health-related decisions, or any other type are either out of date, inaccurate, imprecise, or have bad metadata, ground truthing is inadequate, or the entire question is based on a false premise. Or any combo of above. This means almost all of our results are suspect. Think of us as applied statisticians. Story 47: Goodwill associate. Here couple of things. This isn't a dump. We can refuse things, so stop your bitching of why we can't take your mattress, crib, bed frames, humidifiers, etc. We price items about 13 of its original retail price, so if a table is 19 it will be sold for about 5. Also no bargaining. Prices are set. The really good stuff that was donated gets sent to a pile called eBay and is sold on there with a Goodwill account: jewelry, video game systems, baseball cards, etc. Story 48: I drove for Uber for a few weeks. I had to get a vehicle inspection that required me to have my suspension in working order, no body damage, and a whole lot of other things. I went to the Uber hub and paid for some guy to make sure my seatbelts worked and check off every other box on the list. Story 49: Used to be a baggage handler for the airlines. Don't check a 49, 5-pound bag and slap a fragile sticker on it. Would cover for gate agents too. From time to time, whenever your flight's delayed, for the love of all that is holy, please be understanding. We don't want to stay until 3 a.m. waiting for your flight, just as bad as you don't. Story 50: Medicare assessment process engineering and medical data science computer scientist. Really, the federal government is wildly inefficient with the resources it has, and Medicare would fail if private entities didn't fill the gaps. I have no faith that a single payer system would make the current healthcare environment any better. On the other hand, we could know so much more and answer so many more questions if it was easier to get access to people's medical data, which would be easier with a single payer system in the US. Story 51: Some organic farmers use an enormous amount of pesticides, some non-organic ones use none. In many cases an organic certification is just going through the bullshit to get certified and paying 2x as much for the pesticides you really do put on, or poisoning squirrels with antifreeze. Story 52: I didn't really consider these secrets, except I get argued on Reddit about this all the time, so I guess the public is not aware. One. Pretty much anything you want can be a buy it for life product, or at worst a buy it and upgrade it as time goes on for life product. You just have to be willing to fork over the cash. You can't buy a computer that will last 70 years, but you can buy one that you can keep updating and part swapping for your life. As for non-computer stuff, the same thing is true. You can get a pen that will last for your lifetime, for example. 2. Automation is nowhere near the hype claims it is. It is actually a really complicated field, not just in terms of technology, but in organizing an entire system. Just deciding what parts of a should and should not be automated is a big part of what I do. Story 53: I'm a librarian in a public library. Most items that get donated end up being donated to the recycling bin. I'm sorry, but we really don't need another coffee-stained, dog-eared copy of 50 Shades, and processing it takes time and money. Story 54: Not my job, but where I work. The rumor is that there is a basement full of body bags for when IRA Islamist extremists attack, which is false, as we don't have a basement. In fact, every property in the industry is stocked up for if and when it happens. Story 55: Hygienist here. You are bleeding because you don't floss. However, we're used to lots of blood, and they are your teeth. You only need to floss the ones you'd like to keep for your lifetime. Story 56: What a lot of people don't understand about software and electrical engineering is, it's more like plumbing than you would think. You really only use the hardcore math, i.e., anything that can't be simplified to networks of Ohm's law in RF engineering or high-speed designs, or power electronics. Everything else is, look at the datasheet, follow the instructions, follow rules of thumb. All the circuits the guys at Polulu and Adafruit make, those are basically just a single IC that performs the function, and they followed the white paper for the chip, maybe with some slight modifications. I even read a teardown of the Saley logic analyzer, and from what I remember, the early versions were just a basic FPGA dev kit. It was well implemented, but really the reason it was successful was the whole package worked well, was well designed, and the software made it easy. Getting that design right and implementing it reliably is hard. But the fundamentals are not really hard. and the fact that software engineering is largely plugging systems into other systems, is well documented. It's also by design, because people hate yak shaving. The trick is knowing what libraries and idioms are around. Story 57. I used to work at a vet's. When a dog or any animal gets put to sleep, it gets frozen, chucked in the bins, and eventually ends up at the tip. It's not as fuzzy as people think. Story 58. Physician here. We don't take antibiotics for the sniffles. Also, most of us give each other discounts or see other physicians free of charge. A few years ago I had an elective plastic surgery procedure done. The surgeon gave me 20 off, so did the anesthesiologist. Depending on your state laws, we can write prescriptions for ourselves, except narcotics. Story 59. I work in mental health, and a lot of times we see people with a bipolar diagnosis come who clearly aren't bipolar. They have borderline personality disorder. But telling a patient they have BPD can make them even more difficult to work with, so a lot of times I see mental health professionals just let it slide rather than correcting the diagnosis. Story 60. Engineering manager. To oversimplify my job, if there are multiple solutions, we use the cheapest one. Looking up existing equipment is a major part of my why spend time designing something if I can buy it off the shelf, as long as it's cost effective. This doesn't apply to all industries, but in building it does. Story 61. Worked in a boarding school for longer than I care to remember. And something you won't be aware of is that whatever a school's glossy brochure may say about certain offenses being punishable by immediate expulsion, it doesn't work that way. At my former workplace, I know of at least half a dozen students who were allowed to remain there after using drugs. We're not just talking weed. By the way, several boys who drove a car to a local pub, got shit-faced and rolled the car off the road were also allowed to remain at the school, and while one boy, not even the driver of the car, was expelled, he was a troublemaker, and the school used the car incident as a pretext to remove him. Bottom line is, your kid would probably have to kill someone to get expelled from most private schools in the UK. Story 62. Teacher here. SPED inclusion. Less than half of what I do is teaching. When I was a kid and dreamed about becoming a SPED teacher, I always thought it was a super easy job. That's not why I wanted to do it, but it seemed like a huge bonus. 6 hours a day and summers off. Yes please, I work at a charter school, so YMMV, but I work 10 hours a day at least. I get in at 630 and usually leave by 500. Things I do besides teaching that the average person doesn't know and or think about. Lesson planning takes hours upon hours every week. Grading effectively with comments and showing students what they did wrong so they can learn takes hours. SPED paperwork and meetings take hours to plan for 45 days a week. My lunch is spent dealing with a student in crisis. I do middle school, so everything is a crisis to kids that age, but I still treat them with respect and take them seriously. Calling 30 sets of parents a week month takes hours. Planning a field trip takes hours. Planning any event at school, pep rally, Red Ribbon Week, talent show, any incentive your school does takes hours. At least 2 staff meetings a week that are over an hour each. Saturday school if a certain number of kids falls too far behind. A training about once every 2 months that is either on the weekend or holiday that takes 8 hours. My planning period is almost always spent dealing with students who have behavioral issues who need a break from class. Anytime a kid cussed out a teacher or fellow student, or there is a fight, or someone said something mean, I have a mountain of extra work to do. And it happens nearly every day because it's middle school and there are 400 kids. I love my job, but I can't stand the parents who pull the "how hard is your job?" With me, it's hard, really hard. Luckily, most parents don't act that way, but there are still people out there who think I babysit for 6 hours a day and then go home. If I calculate the hours I work during the school year and spread them out over 12 months, I'm still working over 40 hours a week, and having it compressed into 9 months really you up. I need my summers off. P.S. I am also spending half my summer in PDs and meetings to prep for next year. Story 63. Produce retailer here. Be sure to rinse your fruits and vegetables really well because we sure as don't get paid enough to care what happens to it before and after it reaches the shelves. Seriously though, it gets gross. Sometimes the fruits and vegetables are covered in unidentified water or they're rotting from the inside and we just don't know it, or maybe it just fell on the dirty floor and we put it back on the shelf. The list goes on. Story 64. I work retail, specifically a grocery store's deli. You'd be amazed at the difference in service you'll get if you say hi and ask how I'm doing instead of walking up and blurting your order at me. And if you say please and thank you, you better believe I'm going to charge you for things cheaper than what you're buying. Story 65. I'm a child and family therapist. Some things that are important. A school does not have the right to ask you to pick your child up from school unless they are being suspended or they are sick. If your child has gotten in trouble for something, but has not received a suspension, you do not have to pick them up and you shouldn't. Frequent suspensions, 10 days cumulative or in a row, are cause to question the need for special education services IEP or 504 depending on circumstances. If a child is already on an IEP or 504, a manifestation hearing must be held to determine whether or not the frequent suspensions are related to a mental health or developmental disability. If a school finds they cannot meet the needs of a child for either emotional or academic reasons, they must fund testing and placement at appropriate schools. You can report a child missing as soon as they leave the home. You do not have to wait any period of time. When calling the police to assist with disturbances related to mental health, using the phrase severe emotional disturbance or SED can clue to officers to the fact they are responding to mental health and not necessarily a traditional domestic situation. Most hospitals have offices to assist in obtaining health insurance. Many libraries have passes for aquariums and museums that can be taken out like a library book. If anyone, adult or child, is at risk, you can call and have police do a well check. Story 66. Your hotel room comforter and blanket probably weren't changed as recently as you thought. Of course it depends on the hotel, but even ones charging $300 a night may only require the housekeeper to change the sheets and pillowcases between guests. The comforter and blankets get put aside for the new sheets to go on the bed and then right back on. If they are obviously dirty like food stains, then they are sent to laundry. Next time you see a housekeeper's cart in a hotel hallway, see if they keep any comforters on it. Chances are they won't. Story 67. Software developer here. Apps work because of math. Linear algebra, relational algebra, set theory, and group theory are the most important parts. However, you don't actually need to know the math to make apps. That is because of 4 things you do need to know: encapsulation, polymorphism, abstraction, and inheritance. Story 68. In healthcare, a lot of doctors, especially new grads, are in so much debt they end up pretty much making less than min wage for the next 5 years. So if you got a young doc, he is pretty much broke. Same thing with pharmacists, physical therapists, and etc. Story 69. Hotel manager here. The rooms are often dirtier than you may imagine. Even if they appear clean, do not touch the carpet or cloth furniture. Always check the in-room Bibles for cash. Guests always extort us with the threat of bad reviews if we don't do XYZ for them. I've literally had a guest do this and demand 30 free nights because they misinterpreted a room description online. Just be nice to us and we'll hook you up. Story 70. Almost no famous musical artist has any idea what they're doing musically. I mean, a lot of them can be characterized as very keen business peeps, or even as terribly involved in their production. Not super secret, sure. Famous musical artists or famous for doing technically impressive genres in the electronic field still don't know what they're doing. They don't have to. Every single possible thing has been sampled, preset, packed up, and is available somewhere. I don't think it's a bad thing. In fact, the only bad thing about this is regular music listeners thinking their own vision for music would be too hard to accomplish. Not helped by artists in industry who really love showing off how complex their stuff looks. Never mind that almost none of it was needed to do what they did with it. There are AI composition programs that can analyze input from specific artists to generate new content like that artist. This has been possible in general for a while. Music theory is really just music programming. But this stuff can essentially generate specific music theory for a collection of specific input. Music will never be hard again.